allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's meeting was noticed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. This commission acts in review and recommending capacity for comprehensive plan amendments, text amendments to the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance, rezonings, and plan developments. The commission has decision-making authority on road name change requests, public project reviews, appeals of administrative decisions on final plats and subdivision matters, as well as other matters pursuant to Chapter 29, Title 6, Section 6-29-340 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina as amended. Okay. I'm Cindy Floyd. I'm the chair of the commission. To my right is Pete Pilatus and Luke Morrison, and Adam McConnell. To my left, David Kent, Warwick Jones, and Kent pronounce it for me one more time. Prousa. Thank you. Also seated to my right is Commission Attorney Mark Bell. Seated to my left, Joel Evans, Director of Zoning and Planning. Joel, would you please introduce the staff?
Sure. I have Andrea Melisic, the Deputy Director, Emily Wynn, also Marche Miller, Savannah Murray, and Emily Pickett, and Monica Eustace is here as well. Also in the audience is my boss, Walt Smalls, the Deputy Administrator.
Good behind that, Jeff. Okay. If you signed up to speak, I'd like to remind you that in order to get a good recording of the meeting for the minutes, please speak loudly and clearly into your microphones, and please do not talk over one another. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 12th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Would you please call the roll?
Discussion?
Yes,
On the
please.
Does anybody have any changes?
Yes.
Okay. That never happens.
I got two things. First, I said much more than the energy element should be read by Dominion Energy. That was virtually the only thing that was mentioned in the minutes. I was very critical of the element as prepared by staff. I said it was not up to date. I said other things, including it was politically rather than practically oriented. It was divisive and introduces an undesirable consideration out of determinations. In my more than 10 years on the Commission, political issues had never arisen. Let's keep it way. End of quote. So why are my comments being sanitized? Second, I'm confused by Vice Chair Pilatus' reported comment. He said my request, or it was reported, he said my request for discussion on the elimination of the element from the comp plan would be discussed at the subcommittee meeting. Did he really say that? I thought he said something else. He was responding to a question by Commissioner Krause, who asked whether a vote was necessary. My request was for a discussion at the next PC meeting, not a subcommittee meeting. Why would I ask for approval to raise the issue at the subcommittee meeting? I am on the committee and I don't need the PC's approval to raise it there. To me, it was clear I was asking for discussion at this meeting. By asking whether a vote was necessary, I think Commissioner Krause thought similarly. That is, at this PC meeting. Further, there is no mention of Commissioner Krause's inquiry as to the need for a vote to put the issue on the next agenda. I do not know whether there was a genuine misunderstanding or something else. I hope it is a misunderstanding, but whatever, I hope to speak on the issue at today's meeting. And I move that the minutes be amended to reflect what I and Commissioner Krause said. Thank you.
Okay, so is that a motion to amend the meeting?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there a second?
Well, Kent's got his hand up.
Well, yes, I have some things to say, but I think the proper protocol for it, if you allow me, there's a motion to approve and a second, and now we're in discussion.
Right.
We've had a motion to amend.
Correct.
That should be receive a second, if anybody desires to do so, followed with discussion and then a vote to amend the primary motion. I have something likewise to submit, but I'm not going to do it while this is pending.
Okay, so we're going to vote on
My amendment.
Mr. Jones's amendment.
Second, first.
Oh, I thought,
Second that amendment.
okay, all right. So are we ready, is there any further discussion on the motion to amend?
The only thing I'll add is I did make the comment that whether, regarding the energy element, whether to delete it, I did recommend having that conversation in the subcommittee.
Well, anybody else have anything to add? Okay. How many people are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got to recuse because I wasn't here. Okay. Would you please call the roll on the motion to amend the meeting, the minutes?
Okay, Chair Floyd,
I have to recuse because I wasn't here.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Kent,
Aye.
Commissioner McConnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Morris,
Aye.
Commissioner Pilatos,
Aye.
Commissioner Praza.
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Prowse, did you?
Yes, I
have something
would,
that you wanted to say?
I would like to also propose an amendment to the primary motion to amend the minutes in a different aspect. I'm not quite so well prepared as you were, but I want to throw some things out there. Both cases of which I'm most concerned with, the minutes are really rather thin. I mean, it talks about what the applications were, a few other things, and the discussion is not included at all, which I think it should be. Now, I'm not suggesting that there be verbatim minutes, but the minutes of the meeting is the official record of the proceeding, and they are woefully inadequate with respect to those two topics. There was testimony given. There were exhibits that were presented to the commission. There was actually a presentation by staff, which we never received prior to the meeting, of which I've still not received a copy, which I would like to have for my own personal records, but I think that should be a matter of the public record as well. So I'm not quite sure how to go about amending the minutes to reflect that, and I'm thinking that really probably the best way to do it would be to defer approval of the minutes until we can get something back that reflects our concerns to vote on. So that would be my motion, that we defer approval of the minutes and till we get better minutes that we can review and approve that would be more appropriate, in my opinion.
You going to move the motion, or you moved it?
That was the motion. Defer the minutes until we receive
second it.
amended minutes that better reflect what transpired during the proceeding.
I will second that.
Anybody else have any discussion on that issue?
Well, yes, I 100% agree. I mean, what is necessary is subjective. Like Mr. Krause has said, he doesn't want them verbatim, but we need more detail. I mean, does the director of planning read the minutes before they go out?
Yeah, I look at them, yes. And we've done the minutes the same way for quite a while, but if we want more information in them than what's there now, we can do that.
Just a quick question. I know that these meetings are recorded. Are they easily available on the website?
Yes.
I know those don't substitute for the official minutes, but certainly that information is still publicly accessible. And I just want to make that comment, that it's not like we're not being transparent or something like that.
Right. The meetings are recorded and they're available online.
Should that be reflected in the minutes that people know,
Sure.
since that is the official record, you could put into the minutes
Yes.
that, you know,
Perhaps that would suffice. I don't have a solution, but I'm just generally used to more expansive
I was just thinking for
minutes.
future reference, but, all right, so I think we're, procedurally, we're voting on the motion to defer the amended minutes until we can get those back to us and we have a chance to review. Does that reflect your motion?
Yes, I don't know how to better put it. If someone else knows better how to do it, then
I
let
got it
them
from
offer
the
something.
attorney, so.
Can I suggest, firstly, if I may comment, I still think we need a written comment and something in more detail. You can't skip through all the recordings. Finding whatever you want on a recording, which may go for, well, in our case, an hour or so, is rather arduous, whereas with the paper, you can find it rather quickly. And, you know, you can keep records far easier. You can't keep videos and refer to them. So, yes, I note that, but I certainly don't think it's a substitute. But maybe my suggestion is that we leave it for the head of the department to look at it, let us view the prototype and see whether it's adequate or not.
I don't know that, but I just know that we need, in my opinion, it appears to be
you
other
still-
folks that we need better minutes, more comprehensive
You'd
minutes.
still get to, you'd still get to review the minutes, that this will all be part of minutes to come, okay? So you'd still get to review it. Even, just voting to defer is not going to take away your chance to amend.
Are you talking to me?
Is that what you're saying?
I don't think I was. But I'm just saying, as I understand it, we'd left it sort of blank, that somehow or other we're going to get better, voluminous minutes.
new edition of the
And
minutes.
it was subjective. What is adequate? I can't define it. Mr. Krause can't define it quite. But I was suggesting that we leave the prototype to the head of the department. Let us see what he writes or what he approves. Let him direct whoever collates or whatever and see whether the detail is satisfactory.
So we still need to vote on the motion to defer, correct? Okay. Call the roll, please. I guess I can vote. Can I vote on that?
Chair Floyd,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Kent,
Aye.
Commissioner McConnell, Commissioner Morris, Commissioner Pilatos, Commissioner Praza.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
The next item on the agenda is an update on the comprehensive plan 5-year review, and Andrea Milichek is going to provide that for us.
So we've had 3 of our workshops so far. Our most well-attended one was the Johns Island workshop, which we had June 7th. We had about 45 people attend that one. And then we had the James Island workshop, and we had about 40 people probably attend that one. And we had the one over at Wando Library on the 28th of June, and we had only about 14 people, unfortunately, attend that one. We have upcoming 3 more. This Wednesday will be Bees Ferry. The 26th will be the North Charleston one at our new Economic Development Center in Park Circle. And then the last one isn't going to be until August 28th on Edisto at the Jane Edwards Elementary School. We also have an online availability for people to read the whole draft document and provide comments. We've only had about 10 people take advantage of that, but that will be open until August 30th. So we're working to get the word out on that. And then we have scheduled all of the initial subcommittee meetings. So I believe, I had written them down. We have them scheduled for the end of August and beginning of October, and I think you guys have all been notified of those meeting dates, and everyone has agreed to those. So that's it.
Thank you.
May I speak?
Sure.
As I said, I was under the impression that I would be allowed to speak at this meeting on my recommendation to abandon the energy element. I still would like to do that, but I guess at this stage, I need the chairman's approval to do so. Do I have the chairman's approval?
I think that is better taken up at a later date.
Okay, then I'm going to make a motion to the PC that I be allowed to speak at this meeting on the element.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Chair Floyd,
No.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye?
Commissioner Kent,
Aye.
Commissioner McConnell, Commissioner Morris, Commissioner Pilatos,
Aye.
Commissioner Praza.
No.
The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, point of order, in order to amend the agenda, you need unanimous consent from the body. Unfortunately, the motion does fail because it was not unanimous.
Thank you.
I have a question. So is that going, that's for the next meeting? Because we don't have the agenda out for the next meeting, correct? He's talking about the next meeting, he wants to bring it up.
That was this meeting.
You want to bring it up now? I thought you said for the next meeting, that's what your motion was.
I'm sorry, well then, it was for this meeting.
Oh,
But I don't think it's going to make any difference. If it's going to be unanimous, the chair is going to obviously vote against it. 2 people vote against it. Let me, if I may make a comment.
Sure.
Thank you. I have been on the Planning Commission now for nearly 12 years.
Are you going to take this time to speak to the thing that you wanted to speak to anyway, or are you just going to make a short comment?
Short comment.
Thank you.
I've never been at a meeting where a commissioner has been refused the ability to speak on a subject. Never. This is the first. Thank you. That's it.
just clarification. So you cannot bring up a motion from the floor unless it's on the agenda?
It's got to be a public notice.
Okay.
The agenda's on, has to be, is that right? That's correct.
Planning Commission members, then the agenda was posted, I forgot which date, and then that agenda is now public, and then the order that the body will be taking up the items, in order to amend the agenda, it must be done either prior to the meeting, or the unanimous consent of the body is required to add items to amend the day's meeting.
Thank you, Mark.
Can I ask then, legal, can I make a motion, can I ask, okay, if this goes on to the next meeting's agenda, do you need a unanimous consent?
And if you're requesting to add items to future meetings, that can be done without unanimous consent. Unanimous consent is only required to change today's agenda.
Okay, then I'm going to ask that it be changed. I'm going to make a motion that we change it, the issue being put on the next meeting agenda. Is that acceptable?
I don't think, you don't do a motion for that, do you? Because that would be like adding another agenda item. I don't think you make a motion for that. It's
How
on
the
the
hell
record
do you
that
put something on the agenda?
you've already requested it.
Okay, so I'm confused. As things now, it's going to be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yes, we will put it on the agenda if that's the wish. It's just that we can't change the agenda
Okay,
today.
I understand.
Okay.
That it's going to be on the next agenda, and we can vote on it, and it doesn't need to be unanimous. Is that right, sir?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. We have a new procedure today. We have sign-in sheets for people who want to speak, and nobody has signed up to speak on the comprehensive plan update. So we will go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the director's remarks.
I actually don't have any. Andrea covered up. We have our 4th workshop on Wednesday, so any of the public, of course, and planning commissioners, if you choose to come and see how we do our community outreach for the comp plan, come. It's Wednesday at the West Ashley Library at 5 o'clock, 5:30.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. We received the director's report by email. I received it today, this morning. Is that the same as the director's remarks, or those are different?
That's just if I want to go into detail of the director's report, or if there's anything else like the comp plan thing. But the report is there. If you have questions about it, we'll try to answer.
I do. I noticed that there were 3 items, and I don't have it right here in front of me. I hadn't quite figured out how to manipulate this device to have things I can look at and reference. But it appeared that there were 3 items on there that mentioned something about presented to the Planning Commission at today's meeting. Did I misread that, or?
Well, that wouldn't be in the director's report necessarily.
Well, maybe I can look at it later. So there's nothing from that we're going to be dealing with today?
No.
Okay.
No. That's the history of the last month of permits and where we are in planning projects.
Okay. Well, I'll look, and if I need to, I'll ask questions later after the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, and last item on the agenda is the chair's remarks, and I will skip that since I don't have any. And there is a conceptual plan development workshop that will begin right after this meeting is concluded. There being no further business, the meeting of the Charleston County Planning Commission stands adjourned. The Planning Commission will hold its next regularly scheduled meeting on Monday, August 14th, 2023 at 2 p.m. here in council chambers. All right, do I do a gavel again? Or?
No.
Okay. Welcome to the July 10th, 2023 Charleston County Planning Commission workshop. The workshop has been noticed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. The first item on the agenda is a conceptual plan development workshop, Orange Hill. Mr. Ray Pantlick is present to present.
Thank you, members of the Planning Commission, for your service. My name is Jordan Phillips. I'm one of the partners at Kiowa Partners. Kiowa Partners is the master developer of Kiowa Island, developer of Freshfields Village, developer of the neighboring Cassette community. My company has been involved with Kiowa Partners for over a decade. The entire team here is local, and we think that's an important part of kind of who we are. We employ over 700 people, about over 50% of whom live on Johns or Wadmalaw Island. Johns Island is an important place to us, and we recognize how special it is. Designing with nature has kind of been the ethos of Kiowa since day one. And this team here has been involved with Kiowa since the 70s, some of them. So it's something we live by and an important part of the plan that we're going to present to you today. So let me introduce some of the team members here. This is Mark Permar, who is an architect and planner by trade. He's been involved on Kiowa since the late 70s. Ray Pantlick is a civil engineer and the director of development. Most roads and pretty much everything else you see in Greater Kiowa, Ray has had a hand in, and as well as Tony Woody with Thompson Hutton Engineering. So thank you all.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, and those in attendance that are interested in this project. My name is Mark Permar. When he said I started in the 70s, I actually remember having dark hair and a little bit taller than what I am right now. When I used to come to the county commission meetings when Kiowa was in the unincorporated area of Charleston County. What Ray and I would like to do in particular today is share with you and attendees a series of slides that hopefully communicate the essence of what the proposal is, which is there is a proposal to change the existing entitlements, which we're going to go through, from an existing planned development district to a new planning development district and a companion development district. This is the third of meetings that we've already had in terms of outreach to the greater community. Fortunately, we've had 2 prior on Johns Island. We're looking forward to one Wednesday. You see Looking forward to one Wednesday with the Johns Island Task Force, which are each opportunities for us to share our thoughts about this project. So let me see if I can get us going here. The first part of this presentation is to help give you context of the property. The property is 933 acres in size. This location map aerial shows that it actually bridges between Bohicket Road and River Road. And let's see if, does this laser work here? I'm sorry, Emily, is this? Okay.
Barely on the screen.
That's okay. I think hopefully my words will describe context on this aerial. So the reference to Bohicket Road at the top of the page, all of us are familiar with that long straightaway on Bohicket Road, and then you hit a bend. That bend is approximately 1 mile, which is in the middle of the property on the Bohicket Road side, approximately 1 mile from the intersection of River Road at the bottom. In a similar fashion, this property actually has frontage on River Road, at about the 4600 Address Street range. Again, it's about 1 mile from that point to the intersection. Existing zoning in this area includes AGR, which is on the opposite side of Bohicket Road between Bohicket Road and Bohicket Creek. Although that density allows for 1 unit per 1 acre, in fact, the development along there is closer to like an AGR 8. It's closer to, those home sites are anywhere from 5 to 10 acres in size. So the general pattern along that side, and as it wraps around, is the AG category, AGR category. The balance of the contiguous properties are AGR 8, 1 unit per 8 acres, and the proposal that we have is consistent with that category. Let's see. I referenced the existing planned development district. In 2004, County Council reviewed over about a 1.5 year period, if I'm not mistaken, an application that was approved in 2004 for this planned development district. The basic elements of this planned development district are, it was closer to 721 acres in size. It was slightly smaller. 181 single-family units that are distributed with the orange segments that you see there, and a golf course. The things that we would like to point out to this, because we're going to show a comparison between the existing entitlements and what is proposed. The existing entitlements presently have the primary access off of Bohicket Road, right in the middle where it says primary entry, up in the upper left-hand area. It shows a golf course and the 181 residential units that vary in size. But there are two things that we'd like to point out that we began to assess. While we were doing updates for tree surveys, wetland surveys, and other siting conditions that were last done probably 20 years ago at least, we've gone through that update. We were also assessing this plan for consideration. And the things that we had a particular area of concern about are the golf course is like a 1980s or 90s golf course. And by that I mean it was not unusual to have residential and golf all intertwined. That is, you optimize the residential associated with the golf course and would weave the golf course, the roads, the lotting all around. And we have many great examples. We have other examples that probably should be a little bit better. But we had a particular concern on this because when you do that, there's less flexibility to respond to natural conditions because you're trying to balance all of those things. So you're going to see a difference in that relationship between golf and residential. The other area is that it was either the golf course area and some limited recreation, and then everything else was lotted. You'll see a difference in that going forward. And as I said, there was a secondary entrance off of River Road, but the primary entrance was off of Bohicket. This graphic represents our approach and recommendation for consideration during this early stage of the process. There are a couple of things that we want you to compare and contrast. The first of which is you'll see a lowering of density from the 181 to no more than 120 buildable lots. Once we started to investigate the relationship of high ground and the updates in wetlands and tree surveys, we felt strongly, and the partners did not resist at all. They encouraged the team to embrace the idea of lowering densities and placing those residential home sites in such a way that, remember this sort of gymnastic move between golf, roads, and real estate, is let's go to an old school approach, how golf originally happened, which it wasn't tied with the real estate. It was separate and distinct. It was nearby and under the influence, but when you do that, when you release this tension that's created between the two land use patterns, then you can manipulate the golf and retain far more tree canopy, which is a primary goal of the partners in the area where the golf is proposed. The other activity that we saw was by reducing the road lengths. You'll see a comparison later on. We've eliminated more than 2 miles of roadway that was previously shown on the existing entitlements. Again, another way to increase the percentage attributed to non-developed areas. We went from about 60% of the land associated with recreation and natural areas in the previous scheme to over 80%. That was a goal of the partners, with reference to designing with nature. You're going to hear some references to how we're dealing with particular primary permits related to infrastructure from Ray in just a minute. But the key takeaways are lowering density, change the road pattern, minimize ground coverage, and retain far more buffering and natural landscape, principally along Bohicket Road, by positioning the primary entrance off of River Road. So what you'll see there, the previous scheme compressed and quite frankly eliminated a lot of the vegetation very near Bohicket Road. This actually increases it dramatically going forward. This is a cartoon that we do internally that tries to show evidence of the lead story, quite frankly, is the natural areas and recreation areas. This will sound a little strange, but we don't start first by laying lots out. We establish the natural framework that's in place first, and home sites or any other proposed development is the residual. Typically, you see the reverse. Open space is residual. It's the leftover stuff. We actually do the reverse. And that's a directive of the partners in terms of the design with nature principle. This cartoon, again, tracks the impact of roads. If we had done a similar one with the previous scheme, the roads would be all gerrymandered, dare I say, kind of like a congressional district in South Carolina in terms of wrapping around a lot of different areas. This is more concentrated, and where there are existing trails or dirt roads that we try to minimize impact on that. This is the direct comparison between the proposed development standards on the right and the existing entitlements on the left. Now, I've already gone through the basic elements, but it's important to point out that we believe this way of thinking, this approach to conceptual master plan on the proposed standards will result in substantially more retention of the existing natural framework, as well as a more appropriate balance of residential development on this. The overall residential development on this is more like AG 8. It's more consistent with that. It's just barely under 1 unit per 8 acres. And substantial increase on buffering and natural landscape areas along Bohicket Road. The part of the submission that will be reviewed by staff going forward are a pattern of what goes where. So I showed you the gross level that we had all worked on, but we also have a finite or a hierarchy of what lot sizes go where. And that's largely attributed to existing tree cover or the relationship to wetlands. So this cartoon is attempting to show a hierarchy of, we're going to have certain lots that are in the 6,000 to 10,000 square foot range, others in the 10 to 15,000 or a third of an acre, and then other custom home sites that would be multiple acres. And that is all matched with the existing conditions in that area. And then finally, also as a part of the submission will be an architectural guidelines proposal. And the best way I can describe that, which architecture and aesthetics and landscape architecture is always difficult to describe beyond showing pictures. But if I could share with you this way of thinking, which is the lead story is the natural framework. So architecture has a role in that of how does it live within a natural framework where that's still the lead story. We still have high expectations over the design of homes, but the homes in terms of material will be more blending, the textures would be more natural in feature, the scale of the homes, the massing of the homes will establish caps on sizing of homes, because we all know homes can get carried away in terms of sizing, but the approach is the lead story is the natural framework. If you tip toward that side. So with that is sort of an overview of the proposed project and its location. You might want to share with everyone in the room our approach dealing with primary permits and basic infrastructure. Okay, Rick?
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
And take it back.
Oh,
Here. Go ahead.
Sure.
There.
Along with the draft application we've submitted to the staff, we're working to progress with what we know will be some wetland permits that we'll need for, there's like 170 acres, so it's hard to avoid all of them, but there'll be a couple of places where we need to widen some of the existing roads where there are wetlands adjacent. There's a couple of golf holes where it's necessary to clear the wetlands, but we won't be filling them in order to play over them. In order to support the golf course, we've got 4 ways that we're looking to provide the water source for that. One is with a reclaimed water plant. The sewage treatment plant will be sort of upgraded to tertiary standards so that you can directly use the treated effluent on the golf course. You see a great number of blue water bodies. All of those are in uplands and substantially away from where some of the large trees are. And that system will be interconnected so that in times of heavy rainfall, we can harvest a lot of the rainwater. We're planning to construct a 2.5 million gallon storage tank that will allow us to collect that water and store it. We'll need to purchase some water from St. John's, and we are also applying for a well that's in the deeper aquifer. It's not great water for golf course irrigation. It's got a little bit of salt content into it, but we plan to dilute that. So we're not trying to rely on one particular source. There's 4 different ways that we're going to try to create that water supply. Of course, all the potable water will come from St. John's Water Company. We plan to extend water mains from both River Road and Bohicket. We've conducted a traffic study based on the 120 residential units. There's no warrant that has been prescribed by the traffic engineer to make the primary connection off of River Road. We've got a planned emergency road access off of Bohicket, which is an existing road that currently serves the sporting club. We've discussed this with St. John's Fire Department and with David Abrams at the county EMS, and they both agree that that is a suitable roadway connection in case there's ever some kind of conflict. There's one other driveway connection that we're showing there where the utility area for the golf course irrigation and the reclaimed water plant will be located. But that's just one driveway. We've located over 2,000 grand trees. We haven't mentioned, but Bo Welling Design is the golf course architect. They, go ahead. Bo has, his company has been working along with Tiger Woods for many years, and he was with Tom Fazio's office. And they went through extraordinary efforts to lay this course out to avoid the highest grade of the 2,000 trees. We had a professional forester come out and grade every one of these trees, and many of the A trees are avoided substantially, and the B grade. If there's a grand tree removal, it's primarily with either those that are dead or in a D classification. Even though we are going through the process for the plan development approval, we are internally working on the first clearing and grading plans for the golf course, and we're also intending to file for the first application for the site development of the maintenance area later this year, given we do have existing zoning for some of these uses under the existing PUD. And certainly we want to welcome any questions you may have.
Yeah, I would like to point out one thing that I failed, which is quite frankly pretty important. This existing entitlement plan, if you'll notice up in the upper right-hand color, the lack of color on a gerrymandered sort of parcel there, this property did not, the previous property owner did not own that adjacent property. The partners own it, so what they have done is to add it to this system, but not add units. That previously was a conservation area, it still is, a preservation conservation area, but what it allows for is added increased protection as well as integrating it with nature trails through that area too. So I don't know if you want to say any closing remarks, Jordan? Or?
One thing I want to note is that the course will be operated and owned by the Keel Island Club, so it will be a private course for the benefit of the members of the club. And so thank you all for listening. We value these sorts of meetings and look forward to receiving feedback from everyone.
Any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
Thanks for that presentation. Looks like you read Ian McHarg or something and went back to nature, design with nature there. It looks good. I mean, the impacts are certainly diminished, and I think it's a better design. My question is on the new PDD, you kept the preservation lots. There's 61 preservation lots, and you didn't discuss why you need to create those lots if you don't intend to develop them. That's my question.
Per the Keel Island Club documents, to be a member, one has to own real estate, and there are several sections of Kiowa where there are deed-restricted pieces of land that get sold to people in order for them to be able to become a member of the club. So that's what the preservation lots were for. They will remain natural, but they will be subdivided and conveyed to individuals.
And what often happens when someone purchases those, because of their particular financial condition, the vast majority of the people contribute those to some conservancy group. So it has the added factor of supporting causes by others, as well as retention of that as open space. So it's a paper plat. We've done it at Cacique too. I think we had maybe 10 or so at Cacique, and at Kiowa, I think at last count, we've probably had 40. And what happens is people take advantage of that, and as I said, contribute. It allows for access, number one, but it allows them to also contribute to a greater cause in other areas.
I understand that you're planning a well to 2,000 feet, which is pretty deep. I don't really have any experience or much knowledge, but that I have suggests that 2,000 feet usually gets you pretty pure water. Yours is slightly contaminated with salt. Is this because of the nearness of the ocean and the sea, or was it just that's what it is down there? And second, if it is the sea, you're pulling out a lot of water. Do you expect the water you pull out will not be contaminated over the years?
We're not expecting it to worsen. We have a well at Cassique that's slightly deeper, and that water is treated with a reverse osmosis plant. So we expect it, based on that well and others in the same aquifer, that where we've reviewed all the studies, that we know it has a higher chloride content than what is acceptable for turf grass on established courses.
Any other commissioners have questions?
Would you,
Oh,
I
you-
can't hear, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear what you said, I'm
I just-
sorry.
Sorry. I just asked if anybody else had any questions for the presenters.
I have some questions, and possibly for the presenters, probably. What is, the format is that they gave us a presentation, and I think it says discussion, Planning Commission discussion. Is that question and answer with them, or then will we have an opportunity to discuss amongst ourselves, and then at the last, there's public comment? Is that the way I understand it, or?
That's correct. If you have any questions for the presenters right now, I would like, we could go, if you could go ahead and ask those, but you can ask questions of the staff also.
Well, and the other question I have is, I'm not really that familiar with the county process because I'm new. It's like my fourth meeting, I think. What is it that we're reviewing here? We're reviewing a plan development ordinance, and it also says a development agreement, correct? The agenda.
Correct. That is what the applicant is planning on submitting. There's not been a complete formal application yet because we are still working with the applicant. This is the very first step.
Okay.
This is the conceptual workshop plan, so that this is to familiarize Planning Commission with this forthcoming application.
I see. So then they will, excuse me, follow that up with a formal application, which would include an actual rezoning request.
Correct.
And, with text documents and additional things of that nature.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, well, that helps me a lot. Yeah, unless somebody else that's got a little more seniority than me wants to ask some questions, I have some.
Go ahead.
Sure. I think I read somewhere in the documents that there's going to be a private sewage treatment facility on the property. Is that correct?
That's correct. As a matter of fact, the PUD that was approved in the early 2000s called for a sewage treatment plant. We're planning on building what's technically called a reclaimed water plant. It treats it to a higher standard. And so we're just sort of carrying forward the same methodology that's in the existing PUD.
Where's that on the plan? I don't see it.
It's in the area, the gray area that's in the sort of the top of the page, and that's the combined area for the golf course maintenance, the irrigation supply system, and the reclaimed water plant will all be in that general area.
Okay. And it was approved by the county, but, I mean, what level of approval has it received from other regulatory bodies? Any?
None. We are also starting and have started with the BCD COG, what's called a 208 amendment process.
Right, I'm familiar with that.
And that, of course, includes the county and of course is administered by the COG. And
right.
We haven't completely designed the plant, but Tony Woody and Thomas and Hutton have prepared what's called a preliminary engineering report, and that's been submitted to DHEC in Columbia. Copies were sent recently to a representative the Charleston County Public Works.
Okay, but it ultimately is through the 208 plan, that needs to be approved through the
Correct.
COG,
Correct.
right?
Yes, sir.
And I guess I can just throw this out there with my experience of those before with other jurisdictions. They're not really, or at least so far, hadn't been looked upon very favorably. A number of these things, and maybe y'all's is way better. I don't know.
Well,
I'm sure Tony
We've had
could-
one initial meeting with the COG, and they've sort of laid out the process, and we're beginning to do that.
Okay. Who will it be managed by?
It'll be part of the Orange Hill Property Owner Association.
So the POA will manage a sewer treatment plant
They'll-
as currently proposed.
Yes, and we're expecting that, that through the permitting process, we've got to work out a financial assurance agreement with DHEC, which will establish an escrow account for proper management. Obviously, the POA would have to hire, state licensed wastewater treatment plant operators.
Okay. Let me ask a few other things. It's maybe for the staff can help me. I tried to look at what the current comprehensive plan recommendation was, but it's kind of hard to see it on my little laptop screen. But it's beyond the urban growth boundary line. I did notice that much. It appears that, well, as what's been said is, if I heard correctly, the stuff on the, see if I can find a north arrow on here. I don't see one, but on the other side of Bohicket Road, across from the project, it was AGR, which is a 1-to-1, and I assume that would be a 1 acre minimum lot size.
It's actually 30,000 square feet.
You can't have more than one dwelling unit per 1 acre of property.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
If I may comment, I think I mentioned it. That is the existing zoning along that stretch.
Right.
But when you look at the nature of development on the subdivision plats, it's more like AG8.
Right.
The pattern is more like AG8.
You told us it was more like 5 to 10 units per acre on that side.
1 unit per 5 to 10.
Excuse me, 1 unit per 5
Yeah, I'm
to 10.
sorry.
That's what I meant to
If I said
say.
that, I misspoke.
No, that's what I meant to say. I wrote it down. Okay. So that helps with those things. And it was approved back in '04. And you already mentioned that you've updated some various aspects of it, which obviously would include a new wetlands delineation, probably a new tree survey as well, and a topographical map. When would we see those things, or would we at all?
All of those are exhibits that will be part of the formal application, which we're planning to complete by the end of this month.
I see. So actually with, designing by nature and things of that nature, and I commend you for it. That's a good way to go about doing it. And you're right, all too often people figure out what they want, and the open space is what's left over. But the best way to go about doing that, and it would be instructive for us, I think, to have those materials for our review and consideration, is to look at the topography, look at where the trees are, and also look where the wetlands are. That way the land kind of tells you what's the best way to go about doing it. But we don't have the benefit of seeing those things. So those are just some comments and concerns. Let's see, what else have I got here? Oh, for staff, I guess. How's the density calculated in the county? Does it include wetlands that cannot be developed?
It no longer includes freshwater wetlands
Okay, so.
or OCRM critical line wetlands.
So the information we're being given here is it excludes the the freshwater wetlands from the density calculations. Is that?
That is how we
correct?
calculate this.
Well, and I'm asking these guys, is that what we're being presented with?
Well, there's, the PUD itself is 900, what's proposed now is to add this tract. It brings the total acreage to 933 acres.
Right.
All right, and there's 120 proposed single-family built upon home sites.
Well, does that include the wetlands and the density calculation?
Well, you know,
The 900 acres obviously does.
it does. And we
Okay.
have mapped wetlands on the primary 2 tracks. We have an approximation of the wetlands.
So we would really need to subtract the wetlands from it to get an
We
accurate
will-
calculation of the
We will have
density.
both calculations so that staff and commission can see all of the relationships.
Okay, well,
Right.
that was a pretty easy question, thank you.
It
As again, that
was
would
a
be
good question
instructive.
because
It would be instructive for us to have it now.
Right, we presented the gross figures, and we will present all of the hierarchy.
Right, okay. Let's see, I guess, I don't know, I'll go ahead and offer some more of my comments or concerns, I guess. In the comparison documents that you show side by side, I guess in that first one, that shows the lots in the kind of orangey color, it shows this extra, that one. It shows that land that y'all, I was going to ask about that the representation is that was not part of the original PD.
Right, they did not own that land.
But it's just shown here for,
Well, we're showing it because Jordan and his partners own that land and have incorporated it within.
right, that would be the proposed PD standards next to it.
That's correct.
But I'm just curious as to why it looks like it has a property boundary around it that connects it to the existing in that first graphic. But it's not.
And it's not colored, right? It's
Right,
a pink
right,
color.
right. But you see the
I
lines
only-
I'm talking
no,
about.
But we only included that so that there was a reference to that parcel over there. But we certainly wouldn't have represented that it was part of the original entitlement.
I was just curious. You've
Right.
answered the question.
It was
That's
more
good.
about
Thank you.
reference.
Thank you. And I guess really you're calling it a primary entrance on the sketch plan. Really, it's kind of a sole access, because on the first plan, it has 2 access points, one on Bohicket and one on River Road. The second plan, there's just 1 access, or at least a vehicular access to homeowners or guests or golfers or whomever. There's an emergency access kind of at the top. Am I reading that part of the plan correctly?
We are proposing that there would be only every daily active singular access point
Right.
with the potential under emergency conditions to have a secondary access point off of Bohicket.
Okay.
That's what we're representing. So the existing entitlements, as we understood them, clearly the principal and dominant egress point was off of Bohicket,
Right.
with a potential active one at the bottom off of River Road. But it was somewhat unclear to us whether that was always open or whether it was backup. We don't want to misrepresent what the existing entitlements are. There are 2 access points, one off of River Road, which
Right.
is, I think, by all reasonable standards, very, very secondary, and the dominant one off of Bohicket.
Right. Can I ask why you're only having just 1 access?
We think because of the lowering of density and traffic and not contributing any more traffic to Bohicket, that since the inception of this project back in 2004, all of us in this room have lived what Bohicket Road is like right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we think the more appropriate alternative is to have a singular access point, especially with the lowering density, off of one location, rather than to try to extend more dominant roads on both ends. It's our recommendation.
I see, but, and if I may, it's kind of hard to see it up here, but the house lots up here, say if this guy who lives there, he can see Bohicket Road from his backyard through the trees, I guess, unless it's just left completely opaque, which maybe, I don't know. You'd have to come all the way down here, do all of this and go back here, and then either go back down River Road, back up to where it connects back into Betsy Harrison Parkway, or you'd have to go the other way down River Road, all the way back to where it connects to Bayback Highway. And I'm just thinking that 2 access points probably would be better. I mean, there's certainly not anything that would preclude you from emphasizing or somehow making that what's labeled as a primary entry a sort of a secondary entry rather than just having it only for emergency vehicles. In my experience, more access is generally better rather than less. And it's still, what is it, 160 homes is what the current proposal is for?
120.
120.
No
And
more
what was
than-
before
no more
was
than
160.
120.
I see.
It was a third drop.
I see.
May I comment? We're listening, we're taking notes, we'll take this under consideration. We believe that through the studies we've done to date, that we think the proposal as represented makes sense, but we're listening, we're taking notes.
Okay, thanks.
So we'll assess what it means to have that sort of addition. I hope you know where we are coming from, though, which is to take pressure off of Bohicket. That's where we're coming from.
Right, right. And, you know, traffic's like water. It goes where it's least resistance. So if it's a lot of resistance for people to go out there, they won't use it. But if it's convenient for them to use it and it works, they'll use it. And as I said, just from my experience, it's more accesses are generally better than one way in and one way out. I think Tony can vouch for that, and Trentham too, probably. But anyways, going on. What else did I have here? I guess it's zone plan development currently, and is the thing is to, I guess, rescind and replace would be a sort of an accurate description.
I'm sorry.
To sort of rescind and replace, you would
correct.
just say this PD is going to go away and this new one's going to take its place.
And I would add another R, reflect.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is to reflect on, that was a moment in time, and it was understandable because that was freestanding at a moment in time with existing development patterns at that moment. But hopefully we all continue to learn and observe, and maybe there's something that could be slightly different or better. That's where we were coming from.
I see. And I guess I have a couple more questions, maybe some more comments. It's all right?
You're on a roll. Go.
Keep going? Yeah, you betcha. I took this job because my wife said, well, at least nobody will be able to tell you what you can and can't say. And I like the pay. Other than that. Anyways, so the minimum lots for the AGR8, Joel, would be, what is the minimum lot size there? That's what this would be if it wasn't a PD, right?
If it wasn't a PD, I believe the base zoning here was AG8. It was all AG8, is that correct? Yeah. Same 30,000 square foot minimum lot size, but the overall density could not.
Right. But there's still a minimum lot size. So now I get where they're going. They want a PD so they can have smaller lot sizes, basically. So they have 3 different things. One is a type of cottage, maybe 2 types of cottages, and then a single-family detached home, and then this preservation thing, which I was kind of intrigued by that too, but it appears that's just to allow people to buy them and to gain membership to the club. Those look like they were like really long and skinny townhouse kind of lots to me when I saw them on the graphic. But anyways, I'm digressing. So the reason why they're doing the PD is to do different lot sizes, and that would result in a a mixture of housing types, right? Different lot sizes, different architectural things or whatever, but they're all detached single-family residential dwellings. Is that correct?
As far as my understanding, yes, that's correct.
Okay. But then, I guess I'll point this out too. We'll get an ordinance, and it'll include, or somebody will get it. I don't know if we'll see it again, but it would include development standards in a text format, and it'll also include these map exhibits. But there's the little thing, it says notification. My first guy I ever worked with in planning in civil engineer, he's from Georgia. He was a home builder on the side too, and he said, Kent, that's what we call the weasel clause. And it basically says that nothing on here is real. You referred to it as a cartoon. But I guess when we actually get the documents, it won't be that sort of maximum flexibility won't be in there. So the PD standards that the state allow minor deviations from it without having to go back through the zoning process, which what I'm reading up there basically would allow the whole thing to be completely redone. Is that correct?
Well, there was a lot to maybe respond to in that phrase. First and foremost, we would present a conceptual master plan that shows intent by general land use pattern at this level.
Mm-hmm.
Then there will be a whole series of exhibits that are very specific to lot sizes, appropriate setbacks for each of those lot sizes, height standards. There are all sorts of standards that would be established that are math. It's math.
Right.
And so the disclaimer language, which is in the bottom left there,
right,
is more about that we are representing at this level. This is a 1 to 300 scale drawing.
Right.
That is a fair and honest representation of what we believe our homework has suggested and the vision that the partners have.
Right.
But the exactness, on this drawing, the lot line width is actually 7 feet at this scale.
At that scale.
Right. So my point is that we would want, and the tree survey, since you're familiar with the development process, the tree surveys are accurate to the best possible, but it's not unusual to have a tree that might be a couple of feet off.
Oh, sure.
Right?
And they mislabel them that way and by species and condition all the time.
Yeah, the language is to anticipate as refinement proceeds in concert with the staff, a fair representation of this is the vision and intent, and here is the adjustment to correspond to exact conditions.
I got you.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that for me. And I guess one last comment, I guess, because I don't know if we'll see it again. Nice to see you, Trenum. It's been a while.
Good to see you. If I might just comment for 1 second on what was said by Mark. We want to respond to what's on the ground. And you can't draw a lot without knowing where every tree is. So, as Mark said, those areas aren't going to be where the development will occur. But until you have an engineered subdivision plat, you can't really, and know where the natural features are, you can't really lay out the lines.
Sure, I understand that. And as a town administrator I once worked for told me, he said, Kent, dang it, Kent, kids can't play ball on a field that's got trees on it, and golfers can't play golf on a golf course that's got trees on it. So I understand that part. But since you're there, let me ask you a question or two. We've had our own experiences through development agreements over the years. And my thinking's kind of evolved on that, and I just want to throw it out there because I don't know if I'll get to see you again in this process.
We'll be back we'll be back for your review.
Including the development agreement?
Yes.
We don't have the development agreement here today, so we should probably wait until we actually get it before we start discussing.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to throw one comment out there, if you don't mind.
Please.
that it sort of evolved, and as you know, the development agreement will one day go away. It expires, and with the acreage that's on this particular one, it'll be good for 10 years, according to the state provisions. But the PD does not expire. And it can only be changed by legislative action of the governing authority. So the way I've come to review these things, the old ones, they were just so inextricably intertwined, you couldn't tell what was the burden and benefit for the governing authority and the landowner, and what was zoning standards that wouldn't go away, like what you said, all these intricate details that will come later about what and how it's going to look, and the standards and the specifications. So that's just my comment, that it really ought to be something that sort of just sits on top of the zoning. So when the development agreement expires in 10 years, the zoning remains in place.
And we intend to do that because I know exactly what you're talking about. We're experiencing it somewhere else where the development agreement became the zoning, and it's not really zoning. It's a development agreement.
Right.
So we're going to have a PD that is in line with the county ordinance, which is very specific, and the development agreement will, in some ways mirror that, but you're going to have a separate zoning document that is not the development agreement.
Okay, that's very good. Glad we're on the same page with that one.
Okay, are we ready to move along?
Yes, I think so. Thank you for your indulgence.
Anybody else have any questions or comments among the commissioners? Okay, we have people who have signed up to speak at this. So the first person on the list is, and please excuse me if I pronounce your name incorrectly, Mark Permar. Is he here?
I'm sorry. That's me.
I think we're the first three people.
Yeah. I apologize.
Well, you did. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
I apologize.
All right, and Ray Pantlick, I got to recognize that. Okay, you're the first three people. Okay. All right, then we go down to John Zolgar.
Good afternoon, John Zolgar, John's Island Task Force. Good to see everybody again. It's been a while for myself before John's Island thing came up. As part of the PD changes, we actually do applaud the owner for a couple of things. One is reducing the number of houses from 181 to 20. I'm sorry, to 120. But by the way, the reason they came up with 181 was because the number of acres they originally had. Back then, and Mr. Evans can correct me here, back then the wetlands were included, and because it was a PD, they could go from one house per 8 acres to one house per 4 acres. So if you add in all the land and the total number of acres they have and divide it by 4, that's how they came up with the number of houses. Currently, it would be different because of the wetlands are excluded for the last 2 or 3 years. The other thing that we applaud them for is relocating the main entrance from Bohicket Road to River Road. I know there was a lot of discussion there, but as residents of Johns Island, the number of, if you will, curb cuts and the amount of traffic that comes in from those curb cuts, any way we can reduce that is a plus. And so the fact that it may cause a couple of homeowners to spend a couple more minutes to go to Bohicket Road, from the standpoint of safety on Bohicket Road, is a big plus for Johns Island. So we applaud the developer for both of those. And as we mentioned, there's going to also be, as part of this PD, there's also going to be, or part of this rezoning, there's also going to be a development agreement. And that is something that hasn't been part of the PD before, and hasn't, as we've discussed here, has not been publicly released. So none of us have seen what's in it. So the devil's going to be in the details in terms of what's actually in that development agreement. And I do want to note, and Trenton will probably love this, in Section 63110 of the South Carolina Code of Laws regarding development agreements, it states that public benefits may be negotiated in return for the vesting of development rights for a specific period. So it begs the question, what kind of public interest benefits are there associated with this? I know that golf course is done by a well-noted developer or designer and so forth, but from the standpoint of public, and by public I mean people on Johns Island, what does the development agreement get us? And so 3 issues that we've been thinking about. There are other ones. One is the removal of grand trees, and my understanding is the development agreement will try to bypass the BZA and allow this to be, the issue of removal of grand trees be on the administrator, on the zoning administrator. And so if that's what's in the development agreement, we certainly want to see that it's as strict as possible, because the grand trees really are the trademark of Johns Island. And the comment jokingly would say you can't put a golf course in the middle of where a tree is, but you can also move where that golf course is, move where the fairways are and so forth. So we certainly hope whatever is in that development agreement is pretty darn strict. And things such as, if there's large diameter trees, let's move them. I mean, that was what was done at the sanctuary on Kiowa. They actually moved some of the large grand trees. So let's be really nature-based from the standpoint of the large trees. The second issue is the road improvements at the entranceway there on Bohicket Road. It was mentioned that there's not a warrant that requires them to put anything there, but there's a big difference from the standpoint of negotiations, from the standpoint of what it does to the community. From the standpoint of the community and having a development agreement, putting turn lanes there would be a huge plus. Okay, it's not required, but there's a big difference between required and what's in the public interest. And the public interest would be to put turn lanes at that intersection. The third thing is short-term rentals. We certainly don't want to see a huge number of short-term rentals from the standpoint of traffic. And so hopefully the short-term rentals will be only limited to the guests, the owners and their guests. So these are just some of the issues that we hope we'll see in the development agreement. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We look forward to seeing the development agreement. Thank you.
So Jordan Phillips is not one of those people?
No, not that I know of. No.
Jordan Phillips?
Oh, it is.
It is.
Sorry.
Sorry. That's your fault.
Yeah, that's my fault.
Okay. And Charles Brown? Tell us your name and your address.
Charles Brown, 2115 Bohicket Road. And a couple of things. One word which I hadn't heard mentioned, and it's in regards, here we go. How's that?
That's better.
Yeah. One thing I haven't heard mentioned, and it's regard to that deep well and the amount of water they might pull out of it, is something called subsidence. And I was wondering if they ever looked at how fast this aquifer would replenish itself. Because if it doesn't do it fast enough, ground sinks. I saw this a lot more when I lived in Texas, where they had real problems with that. And they're talking about a lot of water, at least it sounds like to me. Because what I saw was 950 million gallons possible, which means it's possible, which would be about 1 million gallons an acre. And that would all this would all go into the ponds, I think I was told at the meeting. And from what they were talking about, this water coming up from the bottom is not real fresh. It's got a lot of chloride in it. It's salt, a little bit of salt. And so that would all be sprayed on there, mixed with water from the ponds and mixed with municipal water, and it would run back off into the ponds or into the groundwater. And I guess when the saturation got enough salt in the ponds, they would then release that into Bohicket Creek. And I was also wondering if there is subsidence and it does shrink down, those people right along Bohicket Creek out there, I don't know how many of them are on wells and such, would that start pulling that salt in from the Bohicket to take the place of the stuff that's not down there? And let's see, because supposedly we have a rising sea level. You don't want to also have a dropping ground level. And let's see, that was basically the two things, is the amount of water and the amount of salt that we bring into the surface and putting down, and the possibility of subsidence, which I haven't really heard mentioned about that aquifer we're tapping into, 2,000 feet down. But that's the only questions I had.
Thank you. Okay, and Rich Thomas.
Thank you. I'm Rich Thomas. I live on Betsy Carrison Speedway. I applaud the reduction in the number of dwelling units. I think that's a good thing. Fewer people, less traffic. And I have three main concerns. One is these ponds. Those aren't natural features. So I'd be concerned if those are going to be dirt pits and used for fill and build development, or the dirt's going to be sold, or it's going to be used elsewhere, and what regulations might govern construction of those ponds, pits. Second concern is kind of the biggest one here, and it's traffic. Now, traffic is always a concern, and every development comes and says, there's no issue with the traffic from our development. We know that each home results in 9 or 10 trips per day. That's sort of a standard that's used. So 120 homes, 1,200 vehicle trips per day. That's residents, visitors, deliveries, whatever else, service people. Then on top of that, we'll have golf course workers, the golfers themselves, deliveries, which could amount to hundreds per day added to that number. So, maybe we're looking at 2,000 or more vehicle trips per day associated with this development. And then the construction traffic while it's being built. I've lived where I am for 15 years, and when I first moved there, it was kind of at the downturn in the economy. There wasn't a lot of traffic. Kiowa Partners, as they said, bought Kiowa Development Partners out and started monetizing their investment. And the development has gone insane. And the number of workers, deliveries, traffic on Bohicket Road, Betsy Carrison has become absolutely insane. So adding to that with this development is a big concern. So I want to see what the traffic analysis says when we start adding more traffic to our overcrowded, dangerous roads on Johns Island. My third concern is the environmental impact of the golf course. I know it's already been approved, but over the last 20 years, we've learned a lot more about Johns Island, the topography, how water flows, how water works on Johns Island. And when I look at a golf course, I think there's a huge environmental impact associated with them. There's pesticides, there's fertilizers, there's herbicides that are used, and all that stuff doesn't go away. It has to go somewhere. And if that's percolating down into the groundwater, then we got to ask where that stuff is going to end up. The effects of all those chemicals on wildlife, and this is a forest now, there's a lot of wildlife in there, bees and other animals that are very important to the ecosystem. So that's a huge concern, and I don't know what regulations the county has governs these ecological aspects, but I think it's something that we need to look at. Also on the water usage, that's a huge amount of water that they're talking about. I think the number was 275 million gallons per year. It's about 750,000 gallons a day. The deep well is going to draw from an aquifer that I understand is already at its limit, and maybe even beyond, with draws from Kiowa, Seabrook, Cacique, and wherever else. I know this was an issue when Google were looking to build a big facility, and I think they were talking about pulling 10 million gallons a day from that aquifer, and that didn't happen. I know DHEC is a governing body here, but we also need to look at, as Tony mentioned, where all that salt is going to go. They draw out saline water. He said it was going to be diluted before it was used, but that salt's still going to be there, and that's going onto this land. Salt, as you know, poisons the land. So That's a big concern. I don't know if that's DHEC, the county, or who looks at that, but I'd urge you to think about these three issues. One is the ponds, whether they're dirt pits and how all that works. The traffic, that's a huge concern. And then the ecological and environmental aspects of the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Based on the last comments, is there any further discussion from commission members? Okay. All right, there's no further discussion from commission members. The Planning Commission workshop stands adjourned. The Planning Commission will hold a meeting on Monday, August 14th at 2 p.m. here in council chambers.
Bad eyes.